So if you're one of our listeners and you're on the fence and you've been sitting there and you see on our Facebook post, you see on our Twitter that we're doing YouTube now, and you're like, nah, but I just like listening to the guys, and I'm just gonna listen. I don't want to subscribe. I don't want to follow them on YouTube. Dan Vasco's shirt right now is a reason for you to pause what the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or Apple and go.
That's right.
YouTube. You got clickbaited by the Facebook ads and made an incredibly right purchase for yourself.
Well, the thing is, for those that aren't on the YouTube, it's one of those Roosevelt's shirts. They make very unique patterns or whatever, and this one's got the floral.
It's a great Hawaiian shirt.
It's a great Hawaiian shirt. It's it's borderline classy, but still fun because it's got the Stanley Hudson from The Office on here.
Wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
The pretzels from Pretzel Day.
It's Vacation Stanley.
Yeah, it's Vacation Stanley. We got the crosswords and everything. So, yeah,
it's
that's
amazing.
Even more the reason to check us out on YouTube.
It is. You got to see this shirt. It's funny because it's, if you would have guessed who would be the first one of us to be wearing a Hawaiian shirt on this show, the odds would have been incredibly in my favor. Like, it would have been like, I would have been like minus 1,000. You would have been like plus 1,000.
Oh, yeah. We could have made our own sports book out of this.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think my flamingo shirt counts as a Hawaiian shirt. You beat me to the punch. I'm a little embarrassed that I went with the classic, red checkered here. I feel embarrassed.
You can't win them all, Mark. It's all right. I'll take the win this week, and we'll see what happens next week. But what I will say is, I didn't even see this online, believe it or not. I was shopping around town here in Greenville and came across this in an actual store.
That's
and was
awesome.
like, the lady was like, oh yeah, they only make these for a limited time and they never sell them again. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to jump on that for sure.
Yeah.
They got a cool one of the Sandlot too. So like, I would highly recommend checking out these guys.
We need to get sponsored by Roosevelt shirts because we both wear them and they are really cool. If you look them out, check them out online. They do a ton of cool stuff. Like the Ron Swanson grilling one is an iconic one. I know they do.
Classic.
Check them out. That's free. No free ads, but free ad for them.
For sure, absolutely. We'll welcome the advertisements. And that's a perfect segue into our Week 5 recap here as we seek those sponsors. So come on down, anybody, anywhere, Bueller. Welcome to the Football Lounge. He's Mark. I'm Dan. We've got a full Week 5 recap here for you, as well as looking ahead at the end of the show towards a couple prominent matchups this week. We have Mark's updated Super Bowl plane, so it's the first update of the season.
What do you do with the Chiefs? I'll give you that. I mean, we'll talk about the Chiefs, but they were in first class last week, and it's a bumpy ride right now for KC.
KC not getting served the meal on the plane right now. That's unfortunate.
Great way to put it. It's a great way to put it.
They're just getting animal crackers today.
But
that's all right. Maybe they can get that filet mignon soon enough. But yeah, so we got that update to look forward to. What do you do with the Chiefs? That is a big question. There's also quite a few other big questions coming out of this week, including what are kickers doing in the NFL? What are the refs doing in the NFL?
Oh, God.
My goodness, what a crazy week for both kickers and refs. I feel like we've been saying that with the refs pretty much all season long and probably for the past few years, but it just gets crazier and crazier, Mark. I don't know.
I think the one thing that I have to say about the refs is that they're ridiculously bad calls like the Cleveland Chargers game. You have things like that are distracting me from the fact that they haven't called a bad taunting penalty in like a week or two. So I think the NFL said, all right, we realized that was ridiculous. Now let's just blow it. I mean, this is one of those things that constantly blows me away at the NFL that you don't have full-time referees. It's just until the NFL, really nuts up and makes that decision, they're going to have to deal with the fact that, with all the camera angles we have now, with all the videos we have, with the money that's at stake, it's a fault in their product right now. It's a real fault in their product. It's not going to get me to stop watching, But you could argue there was at least one game that's like the outcome of the game was changed by just horrific refereeing.
It is kind of interesting because to me, the more, I guess, nuanced that rules become or the more confusing things become, you would think that the refs would have the opposite reaction to it. They'd be reluctant to make more calls because they don't want to be wrong. But instead, it feels like we're seeing trigger happy refs constantly not wanting to miss a call. So it's interesting, that dynamic, because you would think that you'd always want to err on the side of not making a game-changing call instead of missing potentially a game-changing call. I don't know.
I agree.
It's a dicey situation either way. Refs have a really tough job, but I agree with you. They probably do need to have some better infrastructure in place for a referee apparatus within the league, because they make enough money if you can get it to where it is just a full-time job. Maybe make a few more incentives in there. Maybe that would be a step towards helping, some of these problems, because we're sick. A lot of fans out there are sick of hearing the next day how sorry the league is.
Yeah.
But yet, but your team's 0-5.
Salt in the wound.
We're
it's
sorry.
Salt in the wound. Yeah, it really is.
So that's definitely something they're going to have to address this season, let alone just in the coming years and stuff like that. So with that, let's just get right into it, Mark, with our Week 5 recap. We'll start with Thursday Night Football, as we always do.
Yeah.
We were treated to a great game to start off Week 5. I mean, you probably couldn't have asked for a better matchup on paper than the Rams and the Seahawks, both teams vying for position in the NFC West. The Rams were red hot, even though they had come off of that loss to Arizona. Coming back into this one, the Rams win 26-17. And I guess the big news to come out of the game, Mark, is that Russell Wilson was hurt. You could see he got messed up that index or that middle finger on his throwing hand. It has since come out that he is going to need surgery and possibly will be out between 4 and 8 weeks. So a pretty extensive injury for a guy that's, never missed time in his career. Meanwhile, Matt Stafford on the other end also injured his finger. Some weird, moments in the game, a couple weird calls. It was just one of those strange games. But I guess the biggest takeaway, Mark, I don't know about you, Seattle defense just looks brutal.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously the Russell Wilson, he already had surgery to reattach the ligament. Stafford's was different. It was just a dislocation. You pop back in, you try to control the swelling. Yeah. Russell Wilson said as soon as that ligament was torn, you had to get in there, surgically repair it, connect the ligament back. And, you feel for a guy like that who had an Iron Man streak going. The last one we saw like that was Eli Manning's, and he lost it because of a benching, which is just even more ridiculous when you look back at how all that worked with the Giants at the end of his career. Anyways, I think to me, obviously the Seahawks defense is terrible. Great bounce back win for the Rams, though. I will say I do want to give the Rams credit. In Seattle, they were in control of that game early, even before the Russell Wilson injury. Henderson and Sony Michel, really great days for them. Obviously, Robert Woods' big night. He's finding his big targets. I will say, though, I said on my show on Saturday, and I'll repeat it here, I think this in a little bit of a way can be a win for Russell Wilson. Because what do we think that the Seattle Seahawks do well besides Russell Wilson? They're going to be exposed over the next 4 weeks as a very, very marginal football team with very average coaching and a defensive head coach whose defensive schemes seem outdated and players that just don't fit together. I mean, unless Jamal Adams is blitzing in this defense, he's almost completely worthless. And you're spending a lot of money, you give up a lot to get him. And it's not that he can't cover. I mean, we've seen him cover in his career before, but there's something about this Seattle scheme or the way that they're using him and the pieces. So I'm almost excited. As soon as Russell Wilson gets injured and missed time, my prediction of Seattle being the 1 seed, all that, it's out the window. So I'm done. I don't care about that. There's no pride or anything in that's hurt. It's now just I'm excited to actually see the NFL and fans to see how brutal this is about to be for Seattle over the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's a really tough draw because this was still a team, despite all of its defensive issues, that obviously we'd consider in the playoff race. And
because of Russell Wilson.
Because of Russell Wilson. And now without Russell Wilson, if it is at the top end of that 6 to 8 games, now you're talking about a situation where, hey, Geno looked fine in relief. He looked like one of the better backups that you'd like to have in the league, but he's certainly not the guy that can elevate a team to the level. Now, we'll see if they can somehow rally the troops and get a better defensively in the coming weeks. But they have a tough slate ahead as well. Thankfully, they get that bye week in there during Russell's injury timeline. So that will provide some help to them. But yeah, overall, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are not going to be able to do it by themselves. They need a quarterback to throw to them. And Geno certainly a step down from Russell Wilson. Big final breakout this season for Robert Woods, who had 12 catches, 150 yards in this game, by the way. Matt Stafford, they looked great without Robert Woods having the production he did in the first 3 weeks. So this just makes them more scary from my perspective, given anyone can have a breakout day for the Rams on any given day.
It reminds me a little bit of Tampa last year. Remember, you're just on paper, you're like, wow, it's just going to be everyone's getting 8 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. And then you realize you're like, well, wait a minute. When you have so many weapons, sometimes it's taking time for Matt Stafford, even though it's working and they're 4-1, it's still, you can tell it's taking time for him to click with all these pieces. So if they're 4-1 at this point in time, even ahead of where Tampa was last year, I'm not saying that Stafford's relationship is better than Brady's was, but they just seem like they're gelling a little bit more. You can only imagine what it's going to look like week 10, 11, 12,
right, exactly.
Middle of the season in that offense. So, yeah, very excited. Great win for them on the road, regardless of the Russell Wilson injury.
Yeah, they moved to 4-1. Seahawks fall to 2-3, 0-2 in the division, by the way, as well. Falcons at the Jets. We retreated to a very early morning game in London, of course. The Falcons taking on the Jets at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, a place you're familiar with, Mark.
I've been there. I was there for the first ever NFL game there, Bears-Raiders, a little over 2 years ago. And
that is so cool.
The Bears lost that game. That was Chase Daniels starting. Mitchell Trubisky's second year with Nagy. And Trubisky got injured in the Minnesota game the week before. Chase Daniels led them to the win in the Minnesota game. And they lost in Vegas. Against the Raiders in London. Cool thing about that stadium is it was the first ever stadium built, partially funded by the NFL outside of the United States. So the stadium is obviously mainly hosts football matches at Tottenham Hotspur, Harry Kane, and the incredible Premier League team that the Tottenham Hotspur is. But that is designed mainly as an NFL stadium. So the dimensions, the pitch size, all that stuff, and the stadium, the way it's actually designed is with NFL football in mind, as much as it is soccer. So really, really fascinating, beautiful stadium, an incredible part of North London. But I'll say this, that game, I'm glad I didn't watch much of it. I'll say the other thing I'll say about the Falcons versus the Jets, and I said this on my Saturday show too, as I was quickly previewing it. I was like, the only thing I know in this game is that there's a veteran quarterback who is still playing at a very good level, not an elite level, but Matt Ryan. So I was like, when predicting that game, I was like, I'll take Matt Ryan because it's the only thing I trust. Imagine you had 2 rookie head coaches going to London. That's a lot of travel. It's a lot of organization. It's a lot of press they have to do when they're there. And you have one organization with a rookie quarterback and one with a guy, Matt Ryan, who's been in this league for 12 years. And I thought to myself, you know what? I just trust Matt Ryan if you're going to bet on anything in that game. And he showed up and he led the Falcons to a nice victory over the Jets, who, Zach Wilson throws another interception. They just look so unorganized at times. And it's not that I don't think Saleh can get them together, but again, it's just so up and down right now. They are just moody. The Jets are like moody, and most of it's just like the mood is indifferent and sloppy. It's hard. It's just hard to put your finger on.
Yeah, it is. And I will say, Arthur Smith looks about he's the perfect encapsulation of like someone in like 1850s London. Like he just looks like that kind of guy. He's got the big chops and then like the grayness.
Well, he's growing the beard.
he's got that going. He looks like some guy that would have been walking around with a pocket watch at that point in time. So, very prestigious, very esteemed Mr. Arthur Smith on the sidelines for the Falcons. But in terms of the game, I do agree with you a lot with the New York Jets. Look, I think Robert Saleh will probably end up working out for New York. Like, I like the way that he coaches, manages a football game. I mean, their biggest issues really are offensive line and, the quarterback position right now. And those are tough areas to be, poor at in the NFL. And on top of that, it really is seeming to me like what we thought early on was that Zach Wilson may have been a little overrated going into the draft. Now, I like to wait a full season and maybe a couple games into year two to make a as well-rounded of a assessment of a quarterback. But so far, it's looking like Justin Fields probably would have been a better pick for New York at that point, or maybe even a Trey Lance that we saw get his start, and we'll get to that later. But overall, it does seem sloppy. It seems like even just able to do the little things, New York does struggle at offensively. The defense seems to be better than maybe where it was on track for a couple years ago. So that, I guess, is maybe a bright spot to take.
My only other point on the Jets would be, of all the teams over the last 3 years, and there's been a lot of them that have redone their uniforms, like the Chargers, the Falcons, the Patriots, the Bengals, the Jets. I hate the Jets uniforms. I think they're just horrible. The new Bengals uniforms.
Yeah, I don't like the chrome aspect of it. I don't like that.
I'm all in on the new Bengals uniforms. I even kind of like the simplified Patriots uniforms. The Chargers are obviously fantastic. The Falcons is what it is, but like, I just think the Jets uniforms are just ridiculous. And when they play that badly, that green in that like early morning London sun, you're just like, none of this looks good.
I don't think they're as bad though, and you probably agree, as the Thursday night uniforms that the Seahawks wore. That lime green one, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
maybe
not for me.
It's not.
It's
too distracting.
It is very distracting, especially when Russell Wilson's finger is bent backwards. It's even more just hideous.
Yeah. That just hits a bit differently.
It does.
The Broncos at the Steelers at Heinz Field. Pittsburgh gets a 27-19 victory, albeit by a thread hanging on, as the Broncos had a 4th and goal chance in the final minute to try and tie the game up. But Steelers get an interception late and pull off the 8-point victory. Juju Smith-Schuster, the news just coming out today, Mark, that he is going to be out for likely 4 months, which would end his season. Smith-Schuster out with a shoulder injury, so that's kind of a tough blow. But other than that, Najee Harris has a 100-yard rushing day, 142 total yards in this one. And the Steelers get a much-needed victory, really, as they were, on the heels of potentially being out of the playoff race as early as Week 5.
The Steelers have a pulse. That's all you can take away from this. Listen, this team, if they win games this year, they're going to look a lot like that. They're going to be ugly. You're going to have to get some breaks go your way. The defense is going to have to make plays for you. But that's just where the Steelers are at right now through 5 weeks of this season. Can things improve? Sure. They can also go the other way very quickly, the Steelers team. They are literally like on a teeter-totter. Like they are on like a scale. But I'll say, I will, for the Broncos, I don't think this is one of those people who are like, the Broncos are terrible. They're, you just had a very good Ravens team beat you in your building. There's nothing to be ashamed about at that. And then for you to go on the road, early start in Pittsburgh against a desperate Pittsburgh team and to battle back and stay in that game. I'm not totally out on the Broncos, but a lot of people are crushing the Broncos right now. And I don't know necessarily that's fair. None of us thought the Broncos were going to be an 11-12 win team. They're on pace right now to still be fighting and be relevant for a wild card spot. And for the Steelers, you've got to be, as a fan, you've got to be saying to yourself, this season, we got to try to make the most of whatever we can out of this season, because there is no rookie quarterback to turn to. There is no other silver lining. And so the fact that the Steelers have a little bit of a pulse, and I think you tweeted it out as well, the Browns or the Bengals lost, that's all wins for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was a good weekend for Pittsburgh, and it could be even an even better one. We'll see what happens Monday night here with the Ravens taking on a Colts team that's in a similar situation. They're reeling as well. But I think the biggest takeaway for me, Mark, in this game, outside of what I agree with you about the Broncos, because I think they're a good football team overall, and there's nothing to be ashamed about in terms of 3-2. We didn't. I think early on you'd expect this is probably where you expected. If not, maybe they'd be even a little bit worse. They're 3-2. They're still in there, and they lost to 2 hungry AFC North teams with great defenses. So nothing to worry about there. They still have a good defense. What was most encouraging from Pittsburgh's side is the fact that they really greatly improved in the run game, which is something that's the only way they're going to be able to actually hang in there and win games is if they can run the football effectively. And they did it against one of the better defenses in the league. So I think that showed a lot of growth from the offensive line standpoint. Best stat line, 25 pass attempts for Ben Roethlisberger. To me, I think that's exactly what needs to happen for the rest of the season. No more than 30 ever again. Just make it 20 to 30, and he'll get you the third down passes or whatever. But this offense should and could run through Najee Harris.
You have to treat Big Ben almost like you have to treat Trey Lance and Justin Fields in a lot of ways, but for different reasons. Like you just kind of got to protect them with the run game. You saw the Bears doing it really well. We'll talk about them in a second, but that's exactly what you saw from Pittsburgh. Shorten these games. You know what I mean? Like I said it, and we'll talk about Vikings Lions. Of course, that was the first one of the noon starts to get done first because both teams are just like, we want to shorten the game. We're going to take the ball out of our quarterback's hands, run the ball, try and control this game. With young quarterbacks and with a guy like Ben right now, it's not a bad game plan. Everyone wants to open it up, throw the ball because that's what you see the Chiefs doing. That's what you see, the high-flying offenses, Brady throwing for 400 yards. But unless you are confident with your offensive line and you have those weapons and a quarterback in their peak, don't do it. Just shorten the game. Use the running game. And Pittsburgh looked physical for the first time all season. And that was, to your point, I think important.
Very important. And it's reminiscent of, Ben's, second year in the league where they went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl on the backs of a run game and a good defense.
Yep.
He wasn't particularly effective that season, but he did enough to win them the games. That's probably what's going to have to happen this year if they want to make a run at the playoffs. Let's go to the Bears game, Mark, on the road, taking on the Raiders, and the Bears get a 20-9 victory over Vegas. So, hey, a big win nonetheless for the Bears. You'll take it any way you can get it. Looks like the Monsters of the Midway have returned. I don't know about you, but that was probably one of the more impactful games I've seen from a Bears defense in quite some time.
Well, I'll say this. I thought the Bears, Sean Desai deserves a ton of credit, the new defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Probably the smartest thing the Bears did in the offseason was moving on from Pagano and promoting Desai from within. He's been a guy that Fangio tried to steal away. Some other guys have tried to take him as well. The Bears were able to block some of those, but it got to the point where they needed a same person. It's kind of the opposite of what we're dealing with Washington's defense right now. You're saying, why isn't Washington's defense good? Everything's the same. They actually added some pieces, but it's almost like it's gotten stale, and it's almost like it's gotten predictable to what they were. That's what the Bears offense felt like the last year, especially last year under Pagano. They came out and they just really, really dominated the line of scrimmage. And Khalil Mack had a big day, I think 7 solo tackles, including a sack. The Bears were able to really disrupt Derek Carr, and they made big plays when they had to. And then again, the game plan offensively, and credit to Matt Nagy for saying it in the post-game press conference. Bill Lazor, once again, the offensive coordinator for the Bears, second week in a row calling plays, called a really terrific game. It is not the type of game plan that can win you a Super Bowl, but it can win you games in the regular season with a young quarterback who needs all the help he can get to understand playing at the NFL level. Because you see that from Justin Fields. At times, he's like a puppy growing into his ears. He has got such a raw ability, such a raw talent. But even when he scrambles sometimes, still getting hit in the back, still trying to make too much of a play. And that's when he planted his knee wrong and it bent backwards. You're like, he's like eager. He's just like an eager beaver. And they're taking the ball out of his hands. The Bears running back room is fantastic. Damian Williams, Khalil Herbert, the rookie out of Virginia Tech. You forget that they're missing their 2 highest paid, two best backs, David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. They can take all the time they need to get healthy and come back when they're ready. Because Williams and Herbert, really, really nice little tandem there, them by themselves. Bears offensive line is good at run blocking right now. So just run block and go, go, go. I think my favorite stat, like you said, Ben Roethlisberger, Justin Fields only threw the ball 20 times. I know stat line doesn't look pretty. You're like, wow, 12 of 20, 111 yards and 1 touchdown. It's not a great QBR. It's not a great rating. but he played really well in this game. He made big throws when he needed to, found Allen Robinson on that big third down, did scramble a little bit when he needed to, kept himself alive in the pocket, was seeing the field, I thought, overall well. Really.
He didn't make critical mistakes.
He didn't. Unlike Zach Wilson and some of the other rookie quarterbacks you're seeing, he hasn't fallen into that. He's fumbled the ball a little too much, but I think that's because he's just got such a gift to extend the play. You get a road win in the NFL against a Raiders team that has been playing good football. You just got to take that as you can. First road win of the season for the Bears. First passing touchdown for Justin Fields. He's 2-1 as the starter now. And you just got to love the confidence that I think the Bears are starting to build right now, especially going into Packers week.
Absolutely.
And for the Raiders, I bet the Bears to win because I honestly thought the Raiders were going to be very distracted this week with everything going on with John Gruden. And you can tell they came out very flat, uninspired, and a game plan that seemed just they were not expecting the Bears to be able to convert third downs. And the Bears did convert third downs and long drives. I mean, they had that 8-minute drive, and the Raiders offense could have zero flow. Yeah,
and they were, making, uncharacteristic mental errors. A few drops in this one, including that 50-yarder to Bryan Edwards on a third down play.
Waller had a big drop.
Waller had a drop. The Bears then would, kept some of those big weapons in check for the rest of the game. A couple things that stood out real quick was that, 6 and change minute drive, their second of the game, Vegas, where they drove all the way down the field.
Yeah.
Got the touchdown. It got called back, and the Bears hold them to a field goal. That was huge.
Huge.
And I think in the second half, there was a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1. The Bears hung tough and stopped them on back-to-back plays. That was a huge sequence. So, yeah, situational football, Bears won in that, and I think that ultimately is what led to them winning the game. So it was smart football. It was good all around. A good win for Chicago, for sure.
They're playing with a little bit of swagger right now, and they need that going into playing Green Bay at home next week. And I said this 3 weeks ago. What Justin Fields will bring is that swagger because you can see how tough he is. You can just tell the team responds to him really, really well. They follow him. That defense has just been playing really, really inspired football. And it's a beautiful thing to watch in Chicago right now. Again, they're not putting up 40 points, not the Bills right now. Now, I'm not talking about them winning Super Bowls, but this is the type of game plans and a team now, if they can build off some of these, that all of a sudden you can say they could really be hanging around for one of those wild card spots. If they can just win games grinding out 21-9, 21-12, if their defense plays this good and the offense doesn't turn the ball over and runs the ball.
That's the biggest thing, and a defense can really take you a long way. So, yeah, we'll see if they can take that next step. Huge game coming up next week. Speaking of the Packers, Mark, let's get to that game.
Yeah, what a game.
Crazy game. Packers at the Bengals in Cincinnati. This one goes to overtime. The Packers end up winning at 25-22 on a Mason Crosby field goal. But if you're just going off of the box score, you're probably not getting the context necessary for this game because, my goodness, this was the kicker game of the week. Yeah. 4 missed kicks by Mason Crosby in this one of them being an extra point. And then also a couple misses by McPherson for the Bengals as well. And the majority of them coming late in the game. So it was a potential game-winning situation late for Mason Crosby. Misses a field goal. Okay, now the Bengals have a chance. 57-yarder to win it in regulation for McPherson for the Bengals. Misses that one. Okay, it's 57-yarder, whatever, not super expecting it. They get back to the Packers with another chance to win it before going to OT. And Mason Crosby misses that one as well. So then we go into overtime, back-to-back misses by both kickers. Mason Crosby finally relieves all of us and gets the winner there as the Packers take this one 25-22. A win, by the way, in which the Bengals really could have used, but instead they fall to 3-2. Meanwhile, the Packers find a way to get it done on the road.
I think this is it's one of those, it's a growth loss for the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals being 3-2 through 5 games, I think is one of the bigger surprises in the league, but especially just how feisty they've been. I mean, they held their own at home against the MVP and a Packers team that's been playing really good football the past 3 weeks. And they looked like a team that you're going to say they're not going to be an easy out. I'm not saying that, again, the Bengals and the Bears feel very similar, honestly, at this point in time. Slightly different. The Bengals are doing with just better offensive play and a shaky defense. The Bears, it's like the offense every time they take the field, you're just like, please do well. But the defense is playing at a very elite level. They feel very similar in that sense, but they're both very, very feisty. And for the Packers, hey, Mason Crosby's had an up and down career. He's a very good NFL kicker. He's had a very good career, but he's had these moments where it's almost like he gets the yips. Skip Bayless famously loves, the Mason crossbar jokes that he loves to make. Skip is one of the most annoying human beings on the planet. I don't know what kind of money someone would have to pay me to just say what Skip Bayless says. It would have to be a ridiculous amount.
If you were just devoid of any moral compass or just like integrity, then why not? Let's go.
An absurd amount of money to where I would be able to fly private wherever, so I wouldn't have to deal with people being like literally like F you all the time. Anyways, but for the Packers, a win is a win, a road win's a road win, and they found a way to grind out a win against a really feisty Bengals team at home. Didn't play as well as they want, but again, what did I keep saying about the Packers all year? For noon kickoffs on the road against divisional opponents or non-opponents that Rodgers has any sort of fire for, those are the ones I'm going to keep my eye out, because you want to see how engaged is Aaron Rodgers this year. And for the most part, he's now, ever since that Saints game, it's starting to seem like that really was a one-off, that he is engaged. Yeah. He's all in on this year. And he's playing good. He's not playing at his MVP level as he was last year, but he's still playing really winning football. And man, I was so close to that Bengals. I just had it in my head all lined up perfectly. The Bengals were going to upset the Packers. Bears going to beat the Raiders. It was going to be, tied going into next week. But alas, no, the Bears, it didn't work out the way I wanted to. But a really, really fun game to watch too, because you're right. It was chaos at the end.
Yeah, it sure was. And we kind of had similar circumstances there because it was on the line. I didn't want the Packers to win, but I did because they were playing the Bengals, and then vice versa for you there. So let's round out the NFC North then and go to the Lions-Vikings matchup. Really close game, hard-fought game in this one. The Lions fall 19-17 as Minnesota gets a game-winning field goal from Greg Joseph, a 54-yarder nonetheless. On a last-minute drive. Kind of a heartbreaker. You have to feel for Detroit in this one, Mark, given how competitive they played this season, and especially in this game. I mean, they were in it. There were a couple, inopportune moments, especially from Jared Goff, like a bad throw to Eric Kendricks that was picked off. But overall, I mean, you saw the fight in Detroit, and they just come up short in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I know we'll talk a little bit about Dan Campbell here in a second, but as far as just the game goes, I very much predicted on my Saturday show that you should take the Lions plus 10. I thought I said they should win outright, but the Lions getting 10 points at the Vikings was just insane. The Vikings, what that game showed me is the Vikings are not going to be that competitive the rest of the year. I mean, they have a real trouble playing just consistent. The Vikings consistently play to their competition, and it's got to be maddening if you're a Vikings fan. The Bears, the way the Bears beat down on the Lions, the Packers beat down on the Lions at home versus the Vikings at home struggling with the Lions. I think it goes to show you the Lions and Vikings are much closer as teams and as far as talent and schemes and all that than maybe their records would lead you to believe. And like I said, I tweeted it on out. The Lions are maybe the best 0-5 team that I've seen that I can remember. I would agree with that. This is not an 0-5 team that is pathetic. They had a really tough schedule, a couple really bad breaks, and it's learning. And to me, I just hope Lions fans have time. The Lions organization gets time to really see where this goes, because it still, to me, feels like they're building something in Detroit. It doesn't feel an 0-5 or like a Houston where it's like, what are they trying to build there? Or like what's going on in Miami with now you have a coach who's been there for a couple years and what's the quarter like. It feels like they're still just putting these pieces together. And a year from now, you could see the Lions taking another step forward, because they're losing games tight and they're losing games on heartbreaking plays that I know history says this happens to the Lions all the time, but this is the type of stuff where it's
just happens differently.
What do we always say? If a team had like 10 one-score wins one year, they're going to have like 8 one-score losses the next year. Just things like flip like that. And so the Lions, I just feel like they're building something. And man, it was just hard. They scored that, they were up, and you're just like, let's go. That late fourth quarter drive, they get the touchdown, they get the 2-point conversion. You're like, this is it. They're getting the win. And it's just they need a lot of help defensively. They lost their first round pick, the corner, to the Achilles tear. They just it's tough. It's just tough.
It is rough, but we've talked about it in recent weeks too, that they have an identity, they have a clear,
more so
clearer
than the Vikings,
vision.
I think.
Yeah. I don't, and you can't even argue the Dalvin Cook being out thing because Alexander Madison has played great in his absence, and so that wasn't the issue for them. So if you're the Vikings too, I mean, just this said more about the Lions still being this close than it was the Vikings to me eking out a win. That's just what stood out the most. But we'll stick with this matchup for our bold strategy of the week, Mark, as we go to the post-game press conference with Dan Campbell. Very emotional after this one, and shedding tears and crying in the post-game presser. What are your thoughts on him kind of putting that on display this early in the season? Was it overkill, or was it something where it's like, hey, good for you? Maybe that's something that rallies a group.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I mean, I never loved to see my head coach crying in a press conference. It's not, that's like not ideal. But I will say, if you watch it and you actually watch the press conference, and I did watch the whole thing, the start of it to where, the bulk of it, so you're not taking anything out of context. He is so genuine and authentic that there's nothing about it that seemed fake or weird. It's like, what's his name? Was it Dick Vermeil who used to cry a ton? The
all
Rams.
the time.
Yeah. And it's like, again, it's like, it was always so authentic to that human being. And I think that's who Dan Campbell is. I mean, the kneecap biting, the coffee quotes, it's all, it may be ridiculous. The crying, you may just put it in, oh, it's ridiculous, he shouldn't be in charge. But if it is all authentic, there's something that's, to me, is slightly captivating about it and him, and it may certainly making me root for him. I really am rooting for him and to get the fair chance in Detroit to try and keep building what he's trying to build there. So I didn't have a huge problem with it, but I would overall try to recommend to any head coach, don't cry in a press conference. It's not ideal.
Look, I liked it. I thought it was refreshing to see, and I think for the player's perspective, the biggest thing for any, employee that's not a boss, most bosses even have bosses, but especially for, an employee, you want to know that your work is being appreciated and seen. And I think that would go for any job. So I can assume that it's the same at the NFL level, where for players to see that passion from their head coach and for him to talk about how much, fight they had, I think in a sense, just the emotion that he put into it showed the team that, he's not lost on their efforts and that he's in it with them. And I thought that was cool to see. The question becomes, like you said, like if it, the timeliness of it, because, Dick Vermeil was a guy that's just who he was, and that's what he did a lot. But they were always, in big moments. Some people could say, dude, it's like a week 5 loss. Is it really that, big of a deal or whatever? But at the end of the day, man, he's authentic. He is who he is. I think it's just the raw emotion of someone who loves football with all of their heart and loves leading a group of men. So I thought it was cool. And I think the players probably feel the same way about that.
He's literally the exact opposite of Urban Meyer. I mean, they're both 0-5.
Yes.
But like
Urban can't be more
everything
apathetic.
that Dan Campbell does. Yeah, everything that Dan Campbell does is 110% authentic, and it's geared towards the good of the team, the good of the player. And what we've learned now is Urban Meyer, what I kind of awkwardly predicted, that he didn't take the flight home.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, like, so and right now, I mean, I know it's not saying much, but I would a million times take Dan Campbell as my NFL head coach over Urban Meyer right now, ride or die for sure. It's one of those things where I think you're right. Authenticity is important, but week 5, they're going to lose next week. They're playing the Rams. Then the schedule lightens up. They got the Eagles, the Steelers, some other teams. Like, those are some winnable games. It's going to be tough. What do you do when you lose 44-10 to the Rams next week? Do you cry again? Like, it's like,
right. Yeah.
It's a tough spot, but it is authentic.
It's worth noting that it looks like, by all accounts, Dan Campbell did travel back with the team. So there's that. There's that.
He didn't have any Minnesota bars to go.
I was going to say, not that the bar is that high for that, but it is what it is. All right, let's go to the Fins at the Bucks. The Miami Dolphins getting rolled. Tampa Bay seemed to be due for a game like this, especially after kind of the dud of a win that it was the week prior against New England. Bucks go back home and put a hurting. 45-17 win over the Dolphins. Mark, your takeaway on this win for the Bucks and this loss for a Dolphins team that was already in a bad spot.
I mean, I'm starting for the Bucks. Let me just say this: they are really, they're a wagon. I mean, if they continue to stay healthy, their defensive front seven plays so physical. I mean, Vita Vea sets that tone right away. And remember, they missed him for a large chunk of the season last year, that broken leg. And then he came back for the playoff run, and that defense played the way it does. He is such a tone setter for the rest of that defense to just do their jobs and to play off of the physicality that he brings to the table. And when you have him and Ndamukong Suh, and Suh, I know, is much older and not what he used to be. But when Suh's the second most physical guy on that defensive front, you forget about that.
It's a good problem.
And, because the edge rushers get a lot of publicity for that Tampa defense, and the linebackers as well. White, and those guys are great. But their back end still shaky. But I'll say this, Tom Brady, it looks like he's just it's like he's just playing video games right now. I mean, he's seeing everything so clearly, and his body is still able to do 90% of what he asks it to do. He doesn't. I think the thing about Tom that's so impressive is, and I think Ben doesn't understand this yet. Matt Ryan, some of the other quarterbacks who are showing their age don't understand this yet. Aaron's still so physically gifted. We'll see how he evolves in the next couple of years. He doesn't ask his body to do things it can't. It's a lot like how Drew Brees was for like 3 or 4 seasons ago. Problem is then Drew, the last 2 seasons, couldn't even do the stuff that's like you have to do to play winning quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's just really impressive. I mean, his first ever 400-yard, 5-touchdown game, and he did it at age 45. It's just madness. But for the Dolphins, I posed a question to you, and I'll leave it at this: does Brian Flores get the excuse that he's missing his starting quarterback, or is Brian Flores' a job starting to be in the hot seat? If you're Miami, you're going to give up all this stuff to try and get Deshaun Watson, but the whole point of getting Deshaun Watson was he was supposed to be the missing piece. Right now, they look a lot like I expect Seattle to look without Russell Wilson. I mean, they just are not doing anything well.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go as far as like the hot seat situation, because I do think when it comes to that decision, he does get the benefit of the doubt given the circumstances. But in terms of just, the average fan or even just, media assessing the guy, he is rightfully, he deserves some criticism for how this defense has performed.
Yeah.
Because the 45 points to anybody is just not acceptable. It doesn't matter who you are.
And it fell apart at the end of the game. I mean, there was 2 Mike Evans touchdowns of like over 25 yards with like 6 minutes left.
Correct. And whether that's the players, feeling dejected and stuff. I mean, it's your job as a head coach to keep this team fighting and keep them competing. We see that with the Lions. Well, they're a team that doesn't quit. We've seen that with, several teams throughout the year, the Panthers. But so that is the big question mark, because this was supposed to be the strength of the team, and the offense was supposed to kind of be good enough to sustain some drives here and there, move the football methodically, not get the huge splash plays or whatever. And so far, they definitely haven't been getting the splash plays.
Yeah.
The problem is they haven't been able to possess the ball long enough. So, the defense has kind of been put in a bad situation. But regardless of all of that, the way they've been playing the past 3 weeks, definitely not what you want to see, not trending in the right direction. I think Jacoby Brissett is not that big of a drop-off from Tua. So I don't think Tua coming back would make that big of a difference for where they're at right now. I think their problems really extend well beyond that. But ultimately, they do need a solution at the quarterback spot. They do need to revamp that offensive line. A lot of question marks in Miami, but right now, 1-4, they're pretty much out of the playoff race at this point. I mean, obviously not mathematically, they could make a comeback, but where's the silver lining right now for Miami?
There's none.
I don't see it.
The silver lining is hopefully Tua gets back and starts playing really, really well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just not something we can be confident in right now. All right. Let's move on to the Saints at the Washington football team.
Yeah.
New Orleans getting a 33-22 win on the road at Washington, and an 11-point victory for them. Certainly, didn't start off super well, but Jameis Winston able to finish the day with 4 touchdown passes, 279 yards passing. This Washington defense, we talked about it last week. It's not like we want to keep rehashing the same thing, but man, something's up there, man. They're not getting the pressure necessary. And on the back end, even though I know that's not what their strength is, to have 33 points put on them like this, and to really have some poor outings the past couple of weeks. What was it? Allowed 30 points to the Falcons last week, 43 to the Bills the week before, 29 to the Giants the week before. I mean, this is not the Washington defense, Mark, that we were expecting to see coming into this. And I really think, Taylor Heineke aside, that this is probably an issue that they want to address first and foremost.
Well, the thing about Heineke is he plays in a way that's very much like you talk about the drop off Tua to Brissett. The drop off from Fitzmagic to Heineke, I mean, I think it's just as small. It's hard for you to sit there and say, oh, well, we're just missing our quarterback. Again, what does the Washington football team do right now at elite level on the defensive side of the football? I can't think of anything, yet I keep seeing the names in the back of the jerseys going, well, wait a minute. They got this guy. They're good. But they're not. They're just not playing well. And Jack Del Rio, if you're Ron Rivera, you're a defensive guy. Jack Del Rio's a defensive guy. You are 2 really experienced veteran coaches. That's, to me, what's really concerning is that it's where is the leadership of taking ownership of what's happened to this defense and making a change or trying something else, or taking ownership of it in some way, shape, or form. Because I fully expected the Washington football team, I picked them to win that division, thinking they'd end up around 10-7 because they're grinding out games 17-10, 17-14, 20-13, because that defense is playing lights out and Fitzmagic makes a couple big throws here and there. And they're just so far from that right now. They are so far from that. And on the flip side, though, for New Orleans, what a great bounce back win. You lose at home and an emotional return to your home stadium against a Giants team that is bad right now and kind of was just really, really, really hungry for a win. And they caught you off guard. They kind of, caught you sleepwalking and hit you with an uppercut to lose at home. And then you were able to really rebound and go on the road to a Washington team that is desperate for a win. And they controlled the game for the most part. Credit to Jameis Winston, another big stat day for him, 4 touchdowns. Taysom Hill, the injury, I almost think that's mentally a good thing for the Saints and Jameis Winston. I just knowing that he doesn't have to worry about Taysom Hill. And so big win for the Saints. That's what I'll focus on, because right now the football team is just, to me, they're a nothing story. They're a lot like the Vikings right now. What am I to think of you? I don't know. You haven't put any impressive wins together, and the thing that you're supposed to be known for is just not good right now.
Yeah, this is the Cowboys' division to lose, essentially.
It is.
And
their schedule, like you talked about, is super easy coming up.
Yeah, it sure is. We'll stick with the NFC East there with another one of those teams trying to contend. The Eagles getting a big win on the road. I mean, a 21-18 victory.
I've been waiting for you to get to this game.
Yeah, the Panthers not looking good at all. Sam Darnold really struggling in this game. Making just some really poor throws. But the Eagles as well. I don't know, Mark. Like the offense, wasn't particularly impressive. It was nothing Jalen Hurts did that makes you go, wow. He had no touchdowns in this game from him, an interception. But they outplayed in terms of a team win. Philadelphia outplayed them and is able to get the win. I should mention that I harped on Hurts. He did have 2 rushing touchdowns, so through the air, not as productive, but certainly was able to get it done with his legs in key times. But yeah, I mean, the Panthers had a lead early in this one, 15-6 at the half, but they looked like they were in total control. And Mark, the Eagles take care of business, end up getting the win, and really an important one for them, as we mentioned, with the Dallas continuing to get victories. The Eagles now at least somewhat keeping pace. Meanwhile, the Panthers now have lost 2 in a row.
This is one of those wins for me for Philly that I was a firm disbeliever in Nick Sirianni. But again, all of a sudden you have to start saying to yourself, you have that embarrassing Dallas loss on Monday Night Football, and you've bounced back in a couple, in ways in the past couple of weeks where it's just like, this is now really starting to feel like it's coming together for them as far as like the quality of football. They're going to be on a roller coaster because it's a rookie head coach and a very young, inexperienced quarterback who I, in general, don't think Jalen Hurts is someone you want to build around. I think Jalen Hurts is someone who, if you build around him, it just has to be built in a way like Lamar Jackson, but I just don't think he's nearly as talented as Lamar Jackson. So you're taking a big risk on that. But I'm still going to give him the whole season and see where it goes. It's a great win in Carolina. And for the Panthers, man, wow. I mean, as high as we were on them 2 weeks ago, the shine is completely worn off with a couple bad losses. And this is one where it's a little bit inexcusable, because what do we always talk about? Go back to that right before week 1 of the NFL kickoff. You're circling all the wins on the schedule. This is definitely one you circle as a win. When you lose those games, they hurt bad, because you got to look in the mirror. And a lot of it is Sam Darnold had a bad regression game. So I'm very excited to see how they respond to this. Do they completely take the ball at Darnold's hands, just run? Do they change things up? Or is this a big learning moment for Sam Darnold and him and his relationship with this new head coach, and growing and trust and seeing where this team can go next? Because, again, the Panthers' schedule is workable, and they're 3-2. They're not out of it, but this is going to be one of those, if they miss the playoff game, you're going to look back and go, we lost to the bleeping Eagles at home.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming off of a loss in a game where, you're back home, you have a lot to play for in this one. And yeah, it's just on paper, a game that they should have won. I will say too, as bad as Darnold looked in this game and really the past couple weeks, they're not getting what they need out of Robbie Anderson, who they signed to that extension in the offseason. Like, he needs to make more plays. He dropped a couple third down balls in this one, and that's, those are key moments in a game that can contribute to deciding factors. DJ Moore's phenomenal. He's so good. He reminds me a lot of Allen Robinson, like one of the more underappreciated receivers in the league. Very reliable, great hands, just doesn't get the love they deserve. We'll see as well when they get Christian McCaffrey back, because obviously he makes this team so much different. And the Eagles defense isn't terrible. It's a pretty decent defense, especially the front 4. So I agree with you. We'll see how they respond. The Panthers coming up here, Mark. Vikings, Giants, Falcons. This is an opportunity to get back on a win streak. And, if you find yourself back at 6-2 after, now we're starting to talk, okay, all is well. And you can actually continue to make a push there. So All about the response. Totally agree. Let's go to the Titans and Jaguars here. Tennessee finally putting up the points that we thought they were going to be able to put up starting in week 1. The offense has struggled up to this point. 37 points for them in a 37-19 victory over Jacksonville. Derrick Henry, once again, big day for him, 3 touchdowns. Titans were without Julio, but they do just enough to get the win. In your mind, Mark, did you feel like the Jags are now stagnant and plateauing? Do you feel like you've seen growth? Because it's kind of hard to see. How do you evaluate a guy like Trevor Lawrence when the team is just so bad and you don't know what you're getting out of the head coach either? I mean, this is a tough team to kind of figure out. All we know is just they're not very good.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost, what is it now, 19 or 20 straight games?
Yeah, I think it's 20,
dating back to last year. And I think for me, quickly, I'll say this about the Titans before we dive into the Jags. Again, people want to be like, well, they beat the Jags. But again, you go back to those games that you circle on the schedule before the year.
Gotta win
these are important games for them. These are you stack wins, separate your division. The Colts are playing on Monday night against a good Ravens team. You expect, the Ravens to win, the Colts to fall to 1-4. You had a bad loss to the Jets. You've got to bounce back and get this win. So credit where that deserves, to bounce back, get a win against a Jags team that it felt like came out with emotion. I don't know. So a lot of emotion where it was necessarily directed towards. But you know what? The thing I watched when I watched the Jags, and so whenever this game popped up in the red zone, I was able to get good views of it. The thing that kept blowing my mind was how just unorganized the sideline looked. Every time you looked at Urban Meyer, it was it seemed like he has more people around him and different. I'm it just seemed
too many
like
cooks in the kitchen.
It felt like a college sideline. It looks and feels like a college sideline. And it doesn't seem as though he did a good enough job or has done a good enough job surrounding himself with people who understand the NFL game. And to your question a little bit more specifically for Trevor Lawrence, love the touchdown run. That looked like Trevor Lawrence Clemson. Couple still really nice throws in this game. You just got to start asking yourselves, if you're the Cons and you own this team and you're a fan of the Jaguars, at this point in time, we all know Trevor Lawrence is a gem of a prospect, and he's starting to learn this game. Do you say to yourself, you feel comfortable tying Trevor Lawrence to Urban Meyer for the next 4 years? You have got to honestly have those conversations, and you've got to honestly look in the mirror about who you would then bring in, who would want to inherit that dumpster fire, and who do you feel like is someone we can tie Trevor Lawrence to? Because, and right now, Gardner Minshew's won more games. I think it was the last 30 games of the Jaguars. They're 5-14 under Gardner Minshew and 0-20 under everyone else. And it's that's a bad thing for the Jaguars. I mean, that's bad when you have a talent like Trevor Lawrence. So you as an organization have got to start having some real serious conversations.
100%. And it's not like they're devoid of talent. I mean, they have some playmakers on this offense. So I totally agree.
Do you think Urban will be there the whole year? I think Urban gets the whole year. I really do. I think
he gets the whole year. Yeah, I do think he gets the whole year.
Unless they're 0-13, 0-14, and there's now Trevor Lawrence is getting hit and it's injured, or I do think they'll get the whole year to just see, can you start to build momentum?
Yeah, well, obviously I want my bold prediction to ring true that no head coaches would get fired during the season.
Yes.
But no, I do think he'll get the full season, mainly because of what they were committed to in terms of financially, first year head coach, rookie quarterback, all of these things. I mean, I just think that, it'd be very premature. Even honestly, I mean, if they haven't fired him by now, then I don't think they will, because I think there was precedent, for that to happen. I know Peter King came out and said it's not a fireable offense. I tend to disagree because not traveling back with the team, I think, says a lot more than just not traveling back with the team.
I think Pete Prisco, Pete Prisco said on Pardon My Take, when they asked him about it, he's the most connected person to the Jaguars and in the NFL, CBS. And I think he said his quote was something like, It is literally like the only way a coach in NFL history has ever not traveled with the team was like a funeral,
right,
or a death. And that's like the 1 or 2 times it's happened. It's an extreme circumstance, but even in like funerals and death cases, it's like you all show up to a business trip together, you get back home to a business trip together, and then you go about your free time and you do whatever you want your time off because you're all grown men, you're all adults. And you're telling me that Urban Meyer can't get himself a charter plane back to Ohio? It is to me, I agree. I disagree with Peter King. That to me is a fireable offense.
100%. I mean, you can't walk out like, I know it's after hours technically, but it's still a part of your job. It's a part of the duties of the job. So if you were to walk out during a break on your radio show, you could get fired. Like, hey, you didn't perform your duties. I think that's a very similar circumstance. Granted, we're not making millions and we're not coaching the NFL. It's a different game, but still, definitely think they could have went that route if they wanted to. The Patriots market, hey, if you want to call it thrilling, win against the Texans, 25-22 on another one of those field goal games that wins it late. Davis Mills just lit up the scoreboard and the stat sheet. 21 of 29, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns for the rookie. But in the end, the Patriots find a way to win. Crazy game, but yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's with the Bills in your division, you'll take any win you can get, and just trying to stay afloat. Patriots found a way to do that on the road.
You know, I'll start with the Texans by saying I think the Texans, again, this is one of those where you look at it organizationally and you say to yourself, even though you would argue, well, the Texans have a win, the Lions don't. And if you just like the Lions, just like the Texans feel so unsolid and so disjointed versus a Lions team, like the way they're losing, it's not because they don't have the right people in place. It's just because things aren't going their way and some mistakes are happening. What you're seeing like in Houston or in Jacksonville, I mean, it literally is like a clown show. I mean, how do you go from Davis Mills going from like literally like 8 of 21 with like 2 interceptions and 90 yards to that performance and you lose? I mean, it is
against the Patriots defense.
Yes. So it really is just like, I can't even say 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. It's like half a step forward and then you fall flat in your face in a pile of dog shit. I mean, it's like, what the heck happened? And for the Patriots, you breathe that sigh of relief. You burn whatever that tape is. You're proud of your guys for staying in that fight. And you, again, a win's a win. That's one of those beginning of the season. Patriots look at that. Oh, at Houston, we'll win that one. Circle that one. You got that done. Move on. Keeping that hopes alive that you can hang around there for the wild card discussion.
Patriots 2 wins this season have both come on the road. They're 0-3 at home.
Yeah.
So they added to that mix right here against the Texans. The Browns and Chargers, probably the game of the week. It was fascinating. So much fun to watch. Kind of crazy. A lot of back and forth.
Oh, God, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, the refs on display, some really questionable calls in this one. Definitely game of the week. Herbert goes off for 5 total touchdowns. Eckler has 3 total touchdowns. Chargers, 7 of 8 on 4th downs this season. And it definitely seems to have that Brandon Staley influence early on here, Mark. Your takeaways on the Chargers coming away with the 47-42 win, just finding a way to come away with a victory against a very talented Browns team.
Brandon Staley seems like he's an absolute home run hire.
Dude, yeah.
Now we've said this before, where a rookie coach has a great rookie season and then things can flatline and change. But in the moment right now, I think you got to appreciate that he seems to really, really understand the assignment. And I don't know if you saw that viral clip of him the other day talking about running the ball. Did you see that on Twitter?
Yeah.
That's like every football fan's wet dream. Like, I want that guy to coach my team. Can we hire him? Like, is he available? Like, talk about a guy who gets it. I think to me, there's so much to talk about in this game, but I think it comes down to the fact that these are 2 teams in the AFC that should be competing in the playoffs. But what separates them is that one team has a quarterback who every GM would sign to a 10-year deal, and the other team has a quarterback that you're saying, man, if we could get him for $25 million a year, 22, 23, that would be awesome. And I think that's really what it is. I think Stefanski had some shaky moments, but I think, a lot of people were hammering him for the 3rd down and 10 run call. But doesn't that say more about Stefanski knows his team better than anyone else? And Baker had a weird afternoon, to say the least. I think it says a lot about Baker Mayfield. And Dan, one of the things we might have to start talking about at the end of a show here one day or coming up, do something different, maybe on social media, is just, where are you ranking these AFC quarterbacks right now? The AFC quarterbacks is just incredible right now. And you got a guy like a Baker Mayfield, and you say to yourself, well, he's leading a Browns team that won a playoff game last year. It was leading the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the second round of the playoffs. He's winning games with a historically dumpster fire of an organization, but yet you see him then in a game against a Herbert, a Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson. And those are 4 guys easily. You're like, well, he's not nearly those guys. And then you make the argument about Joe Burrow, some of the other younger AFC quarterbacks.
Derek Carr, even,
Deshaun Watson, depending on what his situation is. It's the AFC is a minefield of guys under the age of 27 that you just want to give 5-year deals to. And then there's guys like Baker and Tua and Mac Jones, and you're looking at them like, I mean, they're never going to be better than those guys when you just say quarterback to quarterback in these matchups. I think that's what a lot of this game came down to. Besides the refs, I mean, I don't want to beat it to a dead horse. I mean, unless you want to talk about it, that's my thought on it. My thought on this game comes down to, that's a fun game to watch. It feels like the Browns got cheated in moments, but it also feels like Justin Herbert's that dude and Baker Mayfield's not that dude.
Justin Herbert's incredible. I mean, that's what we've seen all season. We saw it last year, obviously, with the, setting the rookie records and all of that stuff. And, the team just wasn't very good around him. But now we're seeing, the defense has improved, although I think there was question marks for both of these teams in this one. Like, let's pump, like, you can't give up 40-plus points. Like, you just, I know how good offenses are in this league, but to be able to win in the playoffs, you don't want to have to rely on these types of shootouts. It's the same situation with Kansas City and stuff that we'll talk about shortly. I don't know. As great as Herbert is, I mean, do we want them in these situations all year long? Where and the Browns in the same boat. I mean, but it's something to say about them competing against quality opponents here, and Herbert answering the bell. He is capable of winning in basically any situation, and that is all you can ask of a young quarterback who you're hoping to be the face of your franchise, is someone that can find a way to win in different ways and not kill you. And he has been as good as anybody in the league this year. So big stuff ahead for Justin Herbert for not even just the rest of the season, but really, as you mentioned, for probably the next decade. I mean, this is a guy they would lock up instantly if they wanted to right now. So, big stuff for them. Yeah, we don't need to go into the refs because really there's nothing else you can say about what's already been said time and time again. You can go on Twitter for all that stuff.
Yeah, it was a shit show. It was a shit show.
It was just bad. The Giants put up 20 points on the Cowboys, but that's about the only positive thing you could say about it because the Cowboys put up 44 on the Giants in a 24-point rout at home. The Cowboys, Mark, just really looking like, possibly the best team or, top 3 teams in the NFC right now. They're just playing good football. They're playing sound. And, granted, yes, it was the Giants, whatever. It's a divisional opponent. And we all know that those are hard wins to get. Cowboys get it at home, and it's not even close.
Yeah. So looking at my notes on this game, the one thing I want to make sure I say is that obviously the Daniel Jones hit, the stumble, as soon as he goes out, and you got Mike Glennon. I think I tweeted out immediately, no idea Mike Glennon was Daniel Jones' backup.
Yeah.
And Saquon Barkley getting injured. I mean, when you draft Saquon Barkley second overall, 3 years ago now, his career is just not gone at all the way you needed it to go, the way you invested in him in that moment. I don't know if that's his fault. I don't. How do you blame anyone for injuries? He seems like a guy who takes care of his body. I mean, the dude's a physical freak, but maybe that's also part of it. I look back. I was looking back at it the other day before this injury, talking about Saquon Barkley. And like, if you remember, he was not like a bell cow back at Penn State. He was not a 30 carry guy. I mean, and there was people talking about how he really is more of like a Reggie Bush, like explosive player.
He was just electric. Yeah.
A little bit differently. I mean, I'll say this. For the Giants, they're a mess. And the injuries are now piling up. And Daniel Jones, that concussion protocol, Teddy Bridgewater got back in a week. We'll see what Daniel Jones, we'll see with Saquon Barkley, what the prognosis will be. But for the Cowboys, I feel very similar to them I feel about the Cardinals. Right now, they're going to be there in the records for 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds. I mean, they're going to be there because they're winning games right now at a very high clip. I just still don't buy them at all right now as legitimate contenders for the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that when we get to the Super Bowl plane. I can't blame them for winning games that they're supposed to win. You know what I mean? I look at them right now. That win in LA, the Chargers, to me, is the most impressive win they've had. The loss against Tampa, they played well. I thought the game, then the 2 blowouts against their divisional opponents, the Eagles and the Giants, and the Panthers. Now I just don't know what the Panthers are exactly. Are the Panthers closer to the Giants and the Eagles, or are they closer to the Chargers? Right now, I feel like they're kind of somewhere directly in the middle of that. And a team like Dallas, if they can beat teams like that the way they did, maybe they are a good team. But they're at the Patriots the week after that. And then their schedule is really easy. Vikings, Broncos, Falcons before they go at Chiefs. And the Chiefs with 3 losses already are going to be desperate for wins coming up. And so their schedule gets a little tougher, but there's a lot of easy W's, it looks like, for the Cowboys. So they could easily be looking at 10-2, 11-1 as we keep heading down this. If they keep playing offensively. And then this Diggs has shown up out of nowhere. Micah Parsons is legit. They're a fun team to watch, but I feel feeling they're going to be in a lot of these ugly games because their schedule is laid out that way for them to just beat up on some teams that aren't very good.
Yeah, and that's schedule plays a huge factor into kind of how you project moving forward. And off of that, Dan Quinn, you got to love what that move and what he kind of brings to this.
Oh, I agree.
The team and Kellen Moore too, probably one of the more underrated, play callers and play designers in the league too. He had some really good moments in this game. Cowboys just seemed to be really buttoned up offensively, which we thought, maybe they were too volatile and you're not really sure what you're going to get week in, week out. Now I think we kind of know we're going to get a pretty consistent product out of this offense. Moving forward.
And defense, I would agree with you. Yeah. That's a great point. That's a really great point. That the Cowboys of the past 3 years, you never really knew who was going to show up week to week. You knew in prime time when they got a primetime game, they were going to maybe put up points or have a nice showing. But this is now becoming a very consistent Cowboys team. They are deadly offensively. They can score on long drives. They can score quickly, and defensively, they can intercept the ball. They can create turnovers, and they love to rush the passer. And Micah Parsons is a real special young talent. Him and Diggs, they're 2 really special young talents.
Yeah, it might be 2 of the best in the league at their respective positions already, as young as they are. It's pretty crazy. So we'll go from an offensive blowout to a very low-scoring and surprisingly low-scoring game in the 49ers and Cardinals. I mean, where is the offense? What did we, it was kind of crazy. The 49ers only managed 10. Of course, they had Trey Lance getting his start here in place of Jimmy G. And the Cardinals put up 17. So they get the 7-point win at home. And, for Arizona, they just, keep winning. And that's big. Also, we keep winning against a divisional opponent who we thought was going to be, among the top in competition. Of course, they all were. But for the Cardinals, to stay unbeaten, 5-0 now, as good as the Rams have looked, the Cardinals, even though the offense sputtered, did what they needed to do when it counted the most. That final drive of the game was huge. And, Lance for all of the fluff and everything, he's a young quarterback. I mean, he had 69 yards rushing. That was kind of the highlight of his day. Other than that, not much offense in this game.
You know what I'll say about Lance is, going into the draft and even up until the week 1 of the NFL season, I would have said that I think Justin Fields is the best runner of this draft class. The more you watch Trey Lance, you realize, no, that kid, that he's a more natural runner even than a Justin Fields. Justin Fields is really fluid and very straight line speed, fast. But Trey Lance has a little almost like Josh Allen in him, where it's just kind of you're looking and you're like, what is that? Like, it's ungodly. You're like, where is that coming from? It's physical. It's fast. He makes cuts. That's impressive. I mean, listen, the kid is raw can be. And I think his trajectory could be Josh Allen-esque. I mean, you see a lot of what you saw from Allen as a rookie. Like we talked about Justin Fields earlier, like a puppy, like a puppy St. Bernard. You're like, you see it, and you just like, once we can hone this, it's going to be something really special. But I will say this about the Cardinals. I got to give them a little more credit. I was really, more impressed with the Cardinals and the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys put up a bunch of points, because I only thought the Cardinals could really win one way, and that was like, got to blow them out and just put up points. This was the first time I saw a Cardinals team, and they kept going back to this game, Cutting on red zone. You're like, they are just grinding right now. They're in a fist fight. Yep. They're at a bar in a fist fight right now, and it's ugly, and everyone's had way too many car bombs, and no one's throwing good punches, but they're standing their own. Like, the skinny, flashy guy in the tight jeans is holding his own in this drunk bar fight. And credit to them. I didn't think they could compete in a game like this. They did. They won it against a divisional opponent who I thought was way more physical. I mean, the Niners missing Kittle, and now this is part of Kittle's career too. It
really
Kittle,
is. It's unfortunate.
And it's a bummer because he's supposed to be the next Gronkowski. And what Gronk had that Kittle didn't at this point in time, early in Gronk's career, injuries were never a problem. It's still at this point, if you compare the careers, like, injuries were never a problem. Gronk got beat up late, and you would expect that from the physical tight ends. Kelsey's not as physical. His career is a lot more Tony Gonzalez linear in that sense, where it's like, I'm just going to be big and fast and speedy and not be taking a beating. You worry about that now. You're going to really worry about that with Kittle because they need him. He's a huge part of their run game and what they do and how they scheme offensively. So great win for the Cardinals.
Yeah, you'll take it any way you can get it. And there's a good point about that physicality, especially that defensive front. J.J. Watt had himself a game. You saw Dennis Gardeck in there. They do have a good front four, and they showed that they are capable of kind of going toe to toe and winning those trench battles.
Yeah,
that we're not accustomed to seeing from Arizona. So,
can I ask you a question? I admitted my Seattle pick is going to be poo-poo. Yeah. I was going to let you off the hook, but I just want to put out there, how do you feel about the Niners? Because you had them as the winner of that division, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Oh, no. I'm sorry. No, I had the Rams because I had the Rams as the 1 seed.
But you had them as a wild card, but like a 12 winner.
I had the 49ers, I believe, as a 5 seed in the playoffs. So, but I will say, I'm still not,
too early to count him out. Jimmy G getting better. And
yes. But I will say, like, I don't feel good about their chances now because obviously, like, I still think the Rams win this division, and I still think the Rams end up getting the 1 seed. I still feel confident in those.
Cardinals and Rams right now, they feel like playoff teams.
The Cardinals are almost like, to me, unless they do a total dive, they've won games against good teams. So at this point, I feel like they are clearly a playoff team. And a team that could be a force come playoff time too. So, yeah, I don't feel as confident about San Fran anymore. And, I'm not sure, they can't keep digging themselves a hole because 2-3 right now, not terrible, but, it can get out of hand pretty quickly if you stack a couple more losses in the coming weeks.
Totally.
Bills and Chiefs for Sunday Night Football. We had ourselves like a good hour-long delay at halftime. Rainy conditions. A lot of offense, though, in this one, as expected. Bills win 38-20. Josh Allen continuing to dominate, going toe-to-toe with Pat Mahomes, and Allen looked much more polished. And the Bills just overall as a team played a lot better. Bills defense is good, and the Chiefs defense just absolutely sucks, Mark. They're just bad. I don't know what that's to me continues to be the biggest takeaway for the Chiefs is, man, how is this team going to compete, come playoff time if the defense is like it is right now? I mean, in years past, you could at least say they would have moments where their pass rush was good enough or where they would win situationally. Right now, they can't do anything well.
8.1 yards a play they give up. You're giving up it's a huge amount. And credit to the Bills. I thought they came in with a very solid game plan. The Bills, the difference between, so you look at two teams we expected to be in the Super Bowl hunt before the season, right? The Bills and the Chiefs. They were in the AFC Championship game last year. Go back 6 weeks ago. Everyone and their mom who covers the NFL was talking about Chiefs and Bills favorites in the AFC. And it'll kind of be, them slugging it on out. And now by week 5, you watch that game and you look at, you say very specifically, what is the difference between the Bills and the Chiefs? And I think it's pretty plain and obvious. The Bills defense situationally can play at an elite level. They did not need to blitz to create pressure. That is a defense that's good enough to carry you, to get you deep into the playoffs and to a Super Bowl in LA. The Chiefs, they may be offensively 10% more gifted to the quarterback position, 10% more gifted, 20% more gifted to the wide receiver position, 20% more gifted at the tight end position. That's not good enough to overwhelm a Chiefs, a team that it's not good enough to compensate for how bad your defense is. Clark was dealing with the injuries, but he's been non-existent, came back in last night's game. I think there's real reason to panic in Kansas City. Now, they lost 3 games this year to the Ravens, to the Chargers, to the Bills. 3 teams that we now think very highly of, very good contenders in the AFC. But now it looks like there's no way, I don't think at any point in time right now, that I have zero confidence saying that the Chiefs are going to get a first-round bye and home field throughout. And Arrowhead is a weapon. And the fact that they're giving that up by week 5, that's probably now out of the picture, that's huge. I mean, that is, to me, that is really a huge deal. Playing in Baltimore or playing in Buffalo or playing in LA to get to the Super Bowl is a lot different than playing in Kansas City in late January to get to the Super Bowl. So I just think that's it's a huge moment. Week 5, you never want to say it is still early, especially now in a 17-game schedule. But I think the Chiefs have a lot of concern. And at this point in time, I don't know. I still ride with them confidently going week to week because it is Mahomes and he is that special, but he's got to stop turning the ball over. He has 6 interceptions through week 5. He had 6 interceptions all of last year. The year before that, he had only 5 interceptions the whole year. So that's not good enough.
And he acknowledged after the game too that he
has to.
He used to be able to get, like he was the gunslinger guy, but it ended up working. And now he said, I'm being a little bit too erratic, and maybe he does need to dial things back a little bit more and start relying a little bit more on his, reading defenses and things instead of just trying to make, play hero ball every time you go out there.
I will say this. I mean, this is why records don't really matter. I mean, like the 3-2 Bears versus the 2-3 Chiefs. But one thing I will say, what was so evident in that Bears win at the Raiders was the physicality in which that team played football. There was nothing that the Chiefs did that made me say last night, watch that game, like, man, that's a physical football team. And I'm sorry, but the Bills at moments were like, that's a physical football team. Even in the high-scoring Chargers-Browns game, there's some physical football teams. You know what I mean? And the Chiefs are really lacking that. And I know that we've talked highly about Patrick Mahomes' deal and how it actually, in a way, can be team-friendly. But he's making a lot of money now. And there's parts of that defense that are looking old, and there's parts of this team that just don't look physical And that's it's been an Andy Reid thing his whole career. And I certainly have very little faith right now in the Chiefs getting through the slog of the Chargers, the Bills, and the Ravens to get to the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah, not to harp on the guy, but Daniel Sorensen should not be a starting, safety.
No,
definitely not in this. I mean, he got burned on
not against
huge plays in this game.
Yeah, not against a guy like Allen and the weapons they have in Buffalo. And again, it brings up that question about the AFC quarterbacks. I still think if you're telling me right now all the players are available and I have picked one of one to build my franchise, I still think I want Patrick Mahomes. But the gap is closing. The gap is really closing with Herbert and with Allen are the two guys nipping at his heels. And they're the two guys that just beat him in head-to-head matchups the last 2 weeks. And that means something.
100%. We may have been too early to crown him the baby goat when, there's still a lot left to be done and still a lot of football left to be played. A couple things of note, Mark, before we go and kind of wrap things up with the Super Bowl playing and some of these picks here coming up. The Browns game, I'm going to go back to that for a second. An interesting moment. I don't know if you saw one of the late touchdowns with Austin Eckler. The Browns team brought him into the end zone with
yes,
I've never seen that in my life. They actually dragged him 3 yards into the end zone, helping him score. That was interesting. They were also the first team ever in NFL history to lose while scoring 40 points with 0 turnovers and 500 yards. And not even that, they were just the first team to lose while just scoring 40 points and having 0 turnovers. So interesting stuff there in that game.
It once again just goes to show you how weird of a game that was. And that's one of those things where it's when things like that happen and the officiating is bad, that's why I can understand if you're a Cleveland fan, there's some gripe. I mean, there's some legitimate gripe about the way that game was officiated. And I will say that play of the Browns carrying Eckler in, it's so funny because I think sometimes you see it where the offensive player will the hole opens up and the offensive player knows he shouldn't score, but kind of scores anyways. Cause you're just it's football. I can't just literally stop, even though that's what the coach wants you to do. And that was one of those where Eckler was just shuffling kind of to the right. And the Browns were nope, you're coming with us, pal. They legit dragged him in. And at that moment, that's the smart football move. They wanted, it just looked insane. I mean, it really did look insane. But that again adds to how absolutely weird that game was.
It was wild. And adding to the weirdness of the week, 12 total missed field goals and 12 missed extra points. That is the most that's ever happened since they moved the extra point back in 2015. So,
and yet Cairo Santos money. The fact that the Bears, after all this, and now the league is having these moments with the kickers, that the Bears have one of the top, I would argue, 3 solid, believable kicking games. I mean, Cairo Santos was money last year. He got the extension. You say, oh, no, you give a kicker an extension, he's going to be in his head. He's been perfect this year so far. He's not a guy like Justin Tucker who's going to hit a 60-yarder. But if you're within 52, 53 yards, I mean, the guy has been money. And so it's funny. I laugh because there's all this kicker drama, and it's a real thing spreading like wildfire, like the yips with kickers, and the Bears are avoiding that. I just think it's hysterical.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But hey, sometimes the pendulum of luck and the football gods moves in your direction every once in a while, and the Bears certainly are in need of that. Meanwhile, Robbie Gould, that's just salt in the wound. So
it is.
Colts at the Ravens tonight, Monday night here. Ravens 7.5-point favorites. Mark, who you got in this one?
I like the Ravens and the points. I'll take them to win by 8 or 9, 10 points. Probably it could be more. I have no faith in the Colts on the road. Lamar Jackson and this team, they see the writing on the wall with Buffalo, with the Chargers. They want to play keeping up with the Joneses. The AFC North had a bad day yesterday with the Browns losing, with the Bengals losing. They can create some separation. I think it's gonna be all business tonight. I like the Colts defense. I think they're not what they were last year. I'll be fascinated to watch Carson Wentz in a primetime moment dealing with these 2 sprained ankles still. I mean, he's not 100% healthy. I think there's going to be a long night for Wentz. I think the Ravens will get to him. I think it'll still be fairly low scoring, but I still think the Ravens will win by about that, like 27-17, 27, something along those lines. I think the Ravens win pretty comfortably, though. I think they control the time of possession and they control the clock, and Lamar hits a big play or two to Marquise Brown, and they go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I think Baltimore runs away with this one. I don't think it's particularly close, so I would take the Ravens and the points at home. Just I haven't seen enough from the Colts. If this is a game they turn it around, maybe we start to think a little bit differently. Yeah. It would be a big win for them, no question.
Oh, absolutely. If they're able to go in there with a physical football team like the Ravens and get a win, even if it's an ugly win, that'll speak volumes.
A perfect springboard for you in the NFC or AFC South to be able to kind of rival the Titans there. Bucks at the Eagles, Thursday night football. Bucks getting the early 7-point favorite here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Do I have to watch? I mean, the Bucks should rout. The Bucks should rout. The only thing about it is it's in Philly. Philly's feisty. They can score big plays. Like Jalen Hurts throws bombs, and I respect the hell out of that because not enough young quarterbacks will take shots. He takes shots. But again, if the only way the Bucks lose is if they're not prepared and if they're not up for this game. But even if they're not, I still think would then be close at half, and the Bucks tighten the screws and will take care of business in the second half.
Yeah, I think the Bucks win this game. I'm a little bit more hesitant about the spread there. I think the Eagles could find a way to make this close. You mentioned the deep shots from Jalen Hurts. The Bucks' biggest weakness on defense so far has been the secondary and some big plays. So I could see the Eagles at home kind of rallying and making this closer than it should be. And so for there, I'd stay away from that part. I'd probably take the Eagles on the spread, Bucks to win, however. All right, let's get to it. Your Super Bowl plane. We got the update. First week for the update here. Let's see what's changed and what hasn't.
All right. So the plane took off from Tampa last week. It arrived in Atlanta, safe and sound, easy flight. It is now on its way from Atlanta to Charlotte. Gotta just a little hop over. It's just a tiny plane. There's less teams.
Hey, you got that right. I have connected in Charlotte plenty of times since moving out here, so you got that right. It is a big connecting spot.
It's a quick connector. It's a small plane. This is a small plane. There's not as many teams on it this week. First class this week is the Bills, Ravens, Chargers, Packers, Bucks, Rams. So the name that's missing from there that was in there last week was the Chiefs. I've replaced them with the Chargers. I think the Chargers deserve a bump up. I at this point in time, I can see the Chargers winning a Super Bowl in LA at this moment right now. The way Staley's been playing, their defense has to be better, but I've seen flashes from their defense like I haven't seen from Kansas City's, and they're taking care of the ball more. Justin Herbert does not throw interceptions. He takes care of the football. That is huge for a team that doesn't have an elite defense. It's a good defense, not elite. Business class, there's some changes. The two things that stay the same are the Cowboys and the Cardinals. I know a lot of people are probably upset the Cardinals beat the Rams. Again, this is long-term. You're on the way to the Super Bowl. Right now, I still do not see the Cardinals going and winning a game against the Bucks. I don't see them in Lambeau in December, in January, winning a game. I don't see them hosting a Rams team and with all that firepower and Sean McVay versus right now, the Cardinals and being in LA, playing the Ravens or playing the Chiefs or playing the Bills. I don't see it yet. Same with the Cowboys. Cowboys will have the 1 seed probably in the NFC. I would be willing to put money on that. I might look to see what the line is for that in the Sportsbook app. They have a cupcake schedule the rest of the year, and they only have one loss. And the NFC West will beat up each other a little bit. And I do think that the Bucks are susceptible to a couple more letdowns just because their age and just because of the way they don't get up for every game. So the Cowboys will be there, but I just don't see them actually deep postseason success. Yes, I will put the Chiefs in business class. Right as of this morning, I do not think the Chiefs are a Super Bowl winning team. You can't win a Super Bowl with that defense right now. They're in business class. If they lose again, if they lose next week, they might have to drop out of standby. I just right now I'll keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, keep them in business class even at 2-3. Finally, so the teams that lost business class last week, I kicked the Browns out, the Seattle Seahawks out, the Raiders moved out, and the Chargers moved up. And then finally, in standby, these are teams that I'm keeping my eye on. They're on pace to make the playoffs, and they're feisty. They could maybe upset a team in wild card weekend. And that's the Bengals, the Browns, the Bears, and the Titans. I think the Titans, once they're healthy, can still be feisty because I think they're going to host a playoff game. So for them to win a game wild card weekend wouldn't shock me. For the Bengals and the Browns, I just love the Bengals offense. I love that the Browns have identity, the way they run the football. It works in playoff football. And for the Bears, they're on pace right now to be a wild card team. And that defense is playing at a scary level. When the Bears, when you hear the Chicago Bears and leading the league in sacks, that's nothing that anyone wants to mess with, because that's just an identity type thing. It's like when the Steel Curtain's playing great football. It is very much like when the Packers offense is rolling and the quarter, like that's an identity thing. And so I'll give the Bears a sneak in last seat in standby. They just made it in. So there it is in Charlotte. Super Bowl teams capable of winning Super Bowl: Bills, Ravens, Chargers, Packers, Bucks, Rams. Business class, they could win a playoff game or two. Cowboys, Cardinals, Chiefs, but they ain't win the Super Bowl. Standby, feisty, make the playoffs, have a chance to maybe pull a big upset in the first round of the playoffs. Bengals, Browns, Bears, Titans.
I still think you're not giving enough love to the Panthers there. I think the Panthers deserve to be at least on standby in Charlotte. I mean, hey, you're going to Charlotte, for crying out loud, all right? Well, they're at least on standby.
They're in Charlotte. They're leaving Charlotte next week. If they can bounce back, get back 4-2. I had the Panthers in standby last week. I just think when they get a loss like that to an Eagles team that I just don't believe in at home, they got to be kicked off of standby.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Panthers' loss to the Eagles is probably on par in terms of, you know, what you make of it as the Bears beating the Raiders, because the Raiders quality team to beat them. That says a lot about, you know, what the Bears could do. Meanwhile, the Panthers lose to, you know, what you would think an inferior opponent. So maybe it knocks them down a peg. I could see the reasoning there.
And a lot of people may give me shit for the Bears homer pick, but since that Browns game, they've played two really competitive, good football games, a 2-0. Justin Fields, the game plan with Bill Lazor. This is a different Bears team. This is this Bears team against the Lions and the Raiders is a different Bears team than weeks 1, 2, and 3, because Matt Nagy is no longer calling plays. The identity is different. The amount of times I heard number 64 is eligible, it made me almost, you know, have orgasms. I mean, Alex Barrs bringing in the extra offensive tackle to run the ball out of center for the quarterback under center. That's Chicago Bears football, and that's winning football with a young quarterback. So this is a different Bears team. And part of the reason why I put this Bears team in standby is because they're hosting the Packers next week. And if they can beat the Packers in Chicago, then all this and move to 4-2, then all of a sudden they deserve to be in that business class conversation, depending on how that game looked. So I'm just setting them up for probably a massive disappointment and for me to have to kick them off the plane. But there's a chance.
There is a chance. Some good games coming up here, and that is certainly one of them to look forward to. That does it here for our Week 5 recap and the Super Bowl playing update. We appreciate you all. Give us a follow at Dan Vasco, at Mark Hespin, at FB Lounge Pod. You can hit us up on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course, always on YouTube as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And hey, what a week we've got here. We got the NHL kicking off. We got, we're prime into October baseball. So plenty of great games to look forward to, as well as, of course, week 6 of the NFL season. So hope everyone has a great week of all of that, and we will see you back here next Monday.